Hi guys, it's Broken Bexy, and I'm just a girl with a broken body who wants to make a positive difference in other people's lives while trying to live the best life that I can. Today is another story time, and it's a little bit more of a spooky one again. Like I said in a previous video, I had a lot of experiences as I grew up. They started when I was a child and just got more intense, I guess. As I got older, I'd see it a lot more. This one involves my brother's girlfriend at the time. I had moved in with her at a rental, and before I had moved in with her, she had experienced some things herself. So before I had moved in, she had said that she had felt or heard, she never felt alone in the house, even when she was living alone at the time before I moved in. Actually, she had somebody else move in with her, and then they moved out, and then she was alone for a little bit before I moved in. Now, she never felt alone, but she also would hear noises in the house that were noises that had to come from somebody being in the house, even though there wasn't anyone else in the house. Like, it wasn't just noises that she could say, oh, that was just the wind making something make a noise, or it was an old house, so it was just creaking. It wasn't like that. It was, she would hear definite, loud footsteps down the hallway. She would hear noises out in, I'm going to call it like a sleep out. It was the front section of the house, and there was a door from the hallway, and then there were two bedrooms off to the side, which was her bedroom and then became my bedroom. And each of the bedrooms had doors that went out to this front room. And it was one big front room, except on either side of the doorway out the front of the house and into the hallway, because they were opposite each other of this room, there were cupboards placed there, so it would make like section off those rooms. So it was like off our bedrooms we had an extra room that we would have. I know on my side we had an extra bed for if people stayed over, like my brother or friends came and stayed over or whatever. And on her side she had like more racks, like clothing racks and just different things. And she would hear like a loud thump in that room, as if like somebody had tripped over or fallen over or been pushed over or something, just hitting the ground really hard. And she'd hear chains and all of that sort of stuff. Now, when I moved in, I began hearing these things as well. We didn't really hear the things when we were both home. It was more so when we were alone in the house. And it would be that we'd hear the same sounds, like stomping down the hallway. We would hear chains rattling, like somebody was shaking out chains or like wrapping it around something. We'd hear a heavy thump as if somebody was knocked to the ground or falling over. We'd hear noises in our walls, and I don't know how to describe this, because a lot of our friends would be like, oh, you must have rats or something in your walls that are scratching at the walls. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't as if there were rats scurrying in the wall or whatever. It was like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it possibly could have been rats, but it honestly, genuinely felt like it wasn't rats. It felt like, if anything, someone was inside the walls, which was completely impossible because the walls were literally like this thick. And it wasn't anything on the other side of the room, like one of us being in the other room next to our rooms or whatever, because it would be when we were home alone, or I would know for a fact that my housemate was asleep in her room, or I was definitely asleep and she was awake, and there'd be no other movement in the house. I remember one time I had all the windows in the room closed, and in the other room, the front room where the spare bed was and the other cupboards and stuff on my side, I had all the windows closed in there. I honestly never really went out there. The only times I went out into that area was when I would have to get something out of the cupboards that were in those cupboards. I generally kept most of my stuff in my room with me, but when I had to get something that was stored in those cupboards, I'd go out there. The lighting was really good during the day, so sometimes I'd go out to take selfies. But even then, like, I tried to avoid that because I could still get good lighting in my room. And yeah, it was just, it just never felt like a nice place to go out to. And I'll also say that, like, we did have the spare bed for whenever people came to stay over, but people tended to not want to sleep in those room, like in that section. They'd sleep in there like one night or even half a night, and then they'd be like, nah, I'm just gonna go sleep on the couch in the living room or whatever it might have been. But like, they didn't want to sleep out there at all. And yeah, one day I had all the windows closed and everything, and I always kept the door to that room latched. So it was those old, because it was an old house, like everything was old, obviously, and it had those old double doors that had like a little latch that would like sit into a groove, and it would lock the door, and you'd like lock the other door like up into the door frame and down into the door frame, so that there's no way it could open or anything like that. And I always kept one side locked into the door and the, like, both sides of the door frame, and I never ever unlocked it, but I would always check it every single night. I would check that it was locked because I didn't want these doors swinging open. And the only times that I would unlatch the other door would be when I was going out there, and I would latch it straight away, and I would always check it as well. But one day I was in my room and I heard all this noise in the bathroom, which was on the other side of the wall to my room. And I was like, what was that sound? Maybe my housemate has come home. I'm just going to go check. So I went out to go and see what this noise was. And I closed my door behind me. And that's just something that we always did. We didn't really leave our doors open to our own rooms or anything like that. And it was just a habit. So I closed it, but I know I closed it. And went into the bathroom, nothing was there. Walked out into the living room and into the kitchen, and no one was there. My housemate hadn't come back, my brother hadn't come over. And then I heard this noise in my bedroom, and I was like, what was that? So I went back to my room. My door was open. It wasn't open all the way, but it was open enough that on the opposite side I could see the a doorway into the front room, and that door swung open and then swung closed. Not in a way that the wind could have done it, because like I said, there was no windows open, and honestly I can't remember if there was a fan in the room. I don't think there was, because it was an old house. I think I just used a pedestal fan, so like, and it was always facing my bed, so like there was no actual way for it to blow the door open, especially when it was latched, because I had checked it that day. I checked it like an hour beforehand, because every night I would check it, but every time I came home from work I would also check it. And yeah, as I came up to my door, I saw this door swing open, but it wasn't like a swing open, it was like it just had been pushed open, stayed there for a second, and then slowly pushed back. It wasn't like the wind, it was more like somebody had opened it just to walk through and then went to shut it. So those sort of things happened all the time. And there was another part of the house that was really creepy. So when we went downstairs, it was a feeling like no other, especially at night, but even in the daytime. We hated going down underneath the house. That was where our washing machine was. That was where we would have parties if we had drinks or whatever at our house. We hated being down there. It literally felt like your life was being sucked from you. Whatever goodness in you was being drained from your body, and that whenever and like you had no energy. It just sucked the life out of any mood or vibe that was in there. It would be gone straight away. Not many people liked coming over to our place for parties and stuff, because it would just, the entire mood would just die when we were down there. And our things kept going missing. Like I said, our washing machine was down there, and we always hung our clothes up underneath the house. Because it was just easier. It was right next to the washing machine and everything. We did have one outside as well. But we kept having things go missing, and it wasn't just our clothes. It was also our other things, like from inside the house, from underneath the house, from like our cars, from all sorts of things. And like our cars, like we weren't getting broken into. We did find out that our underwear was getting taken by a boy that lived a few streets back, who was like jumping the fences of the people behind us to get into our yard and take our underwear, which is super creepy and kind of sick. And we only know that because our neighbor from behind us said that he caught this boy in the act of it and got the underwear off him and grilled him and all that sort of stuff. But the boy swore he wasn't taking anything else. It was just our underwear, and he was just a curious preteen boy, which is so gross. But there were things that were going missing that even after this, and our neighbor was like keeping a lookout for this boy now. And yeah, so the things going missing could have been this boy. He swore it wasn't, but we can't really tell. So yeah, the mood down underneath was not good. I'm I can't find any details on this house now, but I remember my housemate at the time telling me that this man had murdered another man in the house and had like wrapped him in chains and all sorts of stuff, which went with what we were hearing. But I can't find, not that I've really looked into it too much, but I only remembered this story a couple of nights ago and I haven't had a chance to research into it. But I'm going to have a look into it and see what I can find. The only time that the downstairs area was good was for Halloween parties. It made it so creepy and amazing and so much fun, because everybody would be dressed up, we'd put all spooky decorations up, and we'd always have, while we were living in this house, I think we lived there like 2 years, and we had 2 Halloween parties there, and they were amazing. And people who hadn't been to our house before, especially for drinks and stuff, were like, it's so creepy down here, like you can really feel the mood down here. And we would be like, we knew what was going on, but they didn't. And they'd say it to other friends of ours, and they're like, oh, it just always feels like this down here. But it really made for more of a mood. And I don't know if we were provoking it or what, but it always seemed more intense. Or whether it was just our imaginations because we'd made it look spooky down there or what. But it was like, it was whatever this spirit was getting a thrill out of it being spooky. And I remember one night, this is probably the most spooky or paranormal thing that happened to me while living at this house. I was home alone. My brother and my housemate were out. We used to go on these drives all the time, and we'd go looking for the supernatural. So we'd drive to cemeteries, we'd drive to known haunted houses, not to break in or anything like that. I don't know if they did or not. I know that when I was with them, we didn't really. But they would just drive around and see what they could see or feel or whatever. And this one time I decided, I think I must have been sick or something, because I didn't go with them. I didn't, honestly, weekends and stuff like that, like I didn't spend time at that house. I didn't feel comfortable spending time at that house. And like, if I didn't need to, obviously through the week I would and all of that, but I was usually out and about with one of my brothers, either at one of my brother's houses, or I was out exploring with my brother and my housemate because they were dating. And they went out this one night and I was home alone, and so I was home alone. My housemate and brother were out exploring, and now they usually didn't come home from these drives until like between like 1 and 3 in the morning. They always stayed out like 4 hours, and like they would drive like to different towns that were within a few hours drive from our place. And I was home alone. I'd been hearing things all night. Whatever this was, this ghost was super active this night, and I was freaking out already. And I went outside. No, I didn't.
I heard
something outside, and I noticed that the laundry light downstairs was still on. And I was always forgetting this light to turn it off. And it was like, it would be left on all night. And then because it was daytime, we'd forget that we wouldn't notice that it was on until it was the following night and all this sort of stuff. So like, when I saw that it was on, I was like, oh no, I've forgotten to turn it off again. And our power bill is going to be so high, and I had to turn it off. Because I'd been hearing things outside, I was like, I can't go down right now. It's too creepy. If I had somebody here with me, I'd go and do it. So then I waited a bit and it got quiet. And I went to turn off the light and I went back upstairs. And then a couple of hours later, I thought I heard my housemate and brother getting back. And so I looked out the window to see, because we always pulled up behind the house, that's where our cars parked. And so I looked out the window to see if they were there, and they weren't. So I just assumed it was like the next door neighbor or something getting home or whatever. But I also noticed that the light was on downstairs. And I was thinking, I thought I had gone and turned it off. I went downstairs to turn it off, and the second I got to the light switch, I got this really, really bad feeling. So I flipped the switch and turned around to run up the stairs, and underneath the stairs was this man standing there. He was tall too. He would have been at least 6 foot. He was standing there in a big coat. He had a hat on, so I could not see his face. And he was just standing there looking directly at me. I had nowhere to go. If I had to go over the top of him to get back into the house, or I stay down there with him. And I was scared. I bolted up the stairs because that's what I felt like the only option was. He wasn't close to the actual steps, so you know how there's steps that go up, and then there was like a landing here. He was standing underneath the landing part, and so I bolted up there, locked the doors, and was absolutely petrified. And so I just sat on this seat on the couch just inside the door for another couple of hours, just going, what the hell has happened? And then I heard a noise outside again, and I flipped out. I freaked out. And then next thing I know, my housemate and my brother walk through the door, and they're like, what is going on? Like, why are you so scared? You look like you saw a ghost. And I told her what I'd seen, and she's like, that is how they described this man in the article that I had read. And she hadn't described him or anything like that to me. All she had said was what he had done. She hadn't told me what he looked like or anything like that, and for some reason I hadn't asked. But when I told her what happened, she was like, one, the thing with the lights has happened to her too. And as well as number two, she said that this is exactly how they described this man, that he was a really tall man when they found him, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I just remember feeling that feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. That, like, whenever we went downstairs, it was, whatever it wasn't good. It didn't feel like it had good intentions or anything like that. And honestly, it would have been up there with like my top few times of when I've actually been really, really terrified of a spirit of some kind. Most of the time, I'm able to keep a pretty level head and be like, well, if they were going to hurt me, I would know about it by now. But usually I don't get that feeling. I don't get that feeling of dread. I don't get the feeling that they're there to hurt me. It's just that they're lost and they don't know where they're going or what's going on to them and all of that sort of stuff. But this time would have been up there with one of the highest times of feeling absolutely scared out of my wits. So that is my story of the man under the stairs, and I hope you enjoyed it. I've got lots more stories that I want to share with you all, so make sure you press that subscribe button down below. Give this video a like if you liked it, and give me a comment about what you thought about this story, or if you've got similar stories yourself. I'd love to hear them. And yeah, until next time, bye.